So I'm going on my creative walk, and the first few things that we're going to talk about today, and again, is completely just off the cuff. Okay, we're going to talk about three things. And the first one we're going to talk about is awareness. So, self-awareness and awareness is all about opening up your mind to everything around you in life, and opening up your mind about the self, about who you are, understanding who you are. So a lot of times when people are journaling, when they journal and they journal about themselves, what they're doing is they're opening up awareness to that. And the whole point of that awareness is to learn more about yourself. Like, that's the bottom line. Okay? To learn more about yourself. Why? Why do we care? Why do we care? Well, a lot of times as human beings, we're so used to operating on patterns. So we operate on patterns, we operate on habits, behaviors, thought loops, emotions, all of that stuff. And we fall into the groove of our habits. We rise or fall to the level of our awareness. So if a person doesn't have any awareness, they can fall into all kinds of addiction patterns, all kinds of different avenues in life that could be problematic. And it comes down to journaling is one great method and great tool to become more self-aware. If you go to a therapist and you're having a dialogue with somebody, the whole purpose and point of that dialogue is to be able to reflect on your emotions, reflect on your patterns, reflect on your behaviors, your thoughts. And it's all about understanding those aspects of yourself. Like, that's what it's really about. Now, outside of awareness, you also have intention, our intent. And nowadays, intention is everything. You know, when people have an intent, maybe they have an intent to reach a certain goal, or maybe they have an intent to heal a certain area of themselves, right? Or perhaps they have an intention just to survive. And that's the thing, is that there's intent comes before action. So some people may not have a strong enough intention, which is usually backed by a resolve, or having some sense of inner resolve, right? That's why they say New Year's resolutions, right? And so some New Year's resolutions actually can fail just a few short weeks after. And intent is important, because if you have the intent to exercise, well, that's great, but you have to have some reasons why. Like, why? Why do you want to exercise? Why do you want to work out more? Why do you want that health choice in your to change in your life? And intention comes before action. That's what's so important. And a lot of times we look at certain objects in life as good or bad. We say, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. So let's take alcohol, for example. So alcohol, for some people, if they don't control their intentions and they don't control their impulses, they can fall into drinking a lot, right? It's one thing to have a glass of wine, a glass of wine once in a while to quench your thirst, or just to experience the flavor of wine, to have that experience. But in actuality, intention is everything. So is the alcohol bad? And the answer is no. The alcohol does nothing without you. It sits on the table and does fucking nothing. It does zero. Because it needs your intent behind it. Okay? It's just like if we take a knife and you put a knife on a table. A knife on the table is just a knife on the table. It's nothing. It's an object. That's it. Now your intention behind that, well, the intent can be used to cut your steak. If it was a scalpel, you could perform surgery and heal people. And a person could commit murder. The intention is what's behind it. And that's why when they go into a court of law, the first thing they say is, well, you had that in your hand. What was your intent? And that's why they use the third person or fly on the wall concept, is to get people to understand what those intentions actually were about. Because some people will kind of rationalize in their head what those intentions are. And rationalization happens a lot. So for example, you might have a difficult habit, okay? One that you struggle with, maybe Oreo cookies, right? Something simple. Person might, try to rationalize that Oreo cookies are healthy. So what they'll do is they'll maybe Google and try to find all this data and information on it if they're really curious and interested in knowing. Now, for some people, ignorance is bliss, which means they don't want to know. They don't want to know the ingredients, because if they know the ingredients are bad for them, well, then they would have to hold themselves accountable, and they don't like accountability. So therefore, it would be kind of difficult. Okay? They're like, let me just rationalize these cookies and just go to town and eat them all the time. Become an addict, sugar addict, right? So, the point I want to bring out is that when we rationalize things, what our brain has a tendency to do is try to find an avenue of agreement where your brain agrees with the idea. Okay? Another good example, let me give you Netflix. So there's entertainment, right? People are allowed to entertain themselves, right? Absolutely. It's Friday night. You had a long week. You want to watch a movie. Okay? No big deal. But at what point, go across the street here. At what point does that Netflix become 6 hours of binge watching? At what point? Well, you have to take a hard look at overindulgence. It's okay to have the experience and appreciate it, but at what point does that overindulgence impact your life? Right? I'm going to dive through here. It's going to be fun. We're just going to go through that little adventure. At what point? And here's the answer. Any addiction of any kind that hurts other parts of your life are the ones that you have to consider getting rid of, or at least gaining some control over it. So Netflix is fine. Enjoy yourself. Indulge. Watch a good movie. Enjoy. But if you're connected to the constant dopamine hit of getting that, same season over and over again, or multiple seasons, then it becomes into unhealthy escapism. And that unhealthy escapism could cut into the healthy parts of your life and actually cause harm in other areas of your life. So that's where it gets rough. When you're constantly doing that over and over again. So our intent is to experience, to go and sit down, watch a show, have a good time. But when we start to overindulge in that, so much so that it's damaging other areas of your life, then you have to take an honest look. You have to be honest with yourself at that point. That's where it gets hard. Totally gets difficult at that point. So that leaves us over to just managing. So we hear about management and managing parts of our lives, but we could look at management as a means to manage that area of your life. So if you're escaping into indulgences quite frequently, we have to be able to manage that. So I have a very good friend, his name I will not mention, and he's got like a little Netflix thing going on, a little bit too much. And he likes it, and I'm not going to take it away from people, obviously. So I told him, I'm like, you like watching it? He said, yeah. All right, how many hours go by? Oh, yeah, several, a lot of hours. Do you lose the whole weekend? Yeah. I said, let me ask you this. Is there other things you want to do? Yeah. I want to be able to maybe go out hiking or work out or do other things. Okay. So Netflix is cutting into that. Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I had more time. That's when people say, I wish I had more time. And it's like, well, you have time. And it's how you value what you're doing. That's the thing. Some people will value, Netflix for hours on end over fitness. So it comes down to the measurement of what you value. It doesn't mean we can't entertain ourselves, but when we lock ourselves into it, so much so that other parts of our life start to suffer, we have to put it under a microscope a little bit. It's not about harsh judgment and self-shame. It's about trying to understand the big picture. So management, how do we manage that? The easiest answer to that is schedule your watch time and be disciplined with your cutoff. Be disciplined with your cutoff. So if you want to binge watch for 2 hours, great. Once that 2 hours is up, you did your fill, you did your time. You can always watch it next week. You can leave it for next week. And that's the thing, is that for someone like me who spent a lot of time in the screenwriting world, you start to realize that the binge watching for series, actual television show series, they're rigged. They're all rigged. And here's how they're rigged. See, as a writer, you start to learn the writing patterns. And there's many different story patterns and many different writing patterns. And what you start to realize is that the story patterns that they use for television series, we're not talking about movies that start and finish here. We're talking about movies that run for an entire season and then there's another one. Well, they're using story dopamine patterns. And those story dopamine patterns are to keep you hooked so you find out what happens next. Now, how do they do this? It's real simple. At the end of a show, the end of an episode, they end on a question. They end it on a question, and the question is there to spark your dopamine so you watch the next episode. That's what people don't understand. That's what people don't get. So is Netflix bad? No. The writers know what they're doing. They know damn well what they're doing. They leave it up to the people to have some sense of willpower to say, you know what, I'm only going to watch this for a couple hours and I'm going to go hiking after that. And that's what really matters. And that's what it boils down to, is that we deal with all these indulgences. We deal with all of these escapes, all of these things. But all of those things are really going to just rob us of what's meaningful, because they're all distractions. That's what distractions do. It's okay to escape once in a while, but developing a sense of discipline and willpower is starting to look at what's truly valuable, and not only what's truly valuable, but what's truly meaningful, and maybe connecting with people. But what happens is we don't fall in love, we fall in hate with the way that our lives are. So we can become unhappy with our life. We fall into that hate mode and we say, that's it. I just want to escape. I want to escape, and the worst escape is a form of suicide. Like, that's the absolute worst. They want to escape reality altogether. So it's kind of like there's escapism, there's escapism, there's unhealthy escapism where it cuts into your life. And then there's isolation. And when we become too isolated, it's because we want to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. And isolation, too much of isolation, and a lack of self-love, a lack of liking yourself, or some sense of self-approval where you approve of yourself. When you fall into those traps, like, suicide is not that far away. Because it's like, well, I hate myself, so I just want to escape reality. I don't like my life. And we fall into that groove. We fall into that habit, that way of thinking. And here's what I want you to understand, is that emotions are a pattern, thoughts are a pattern, and behaviors are a pattern. And we have to get used to actually learning to interrupt the pattern. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. So have a great day, and I shall indeed catch you on the next episode. I don't do a live a whole lot, but when I do, it can be a lot of fun. All right? And let's go from there. Take care.